Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to Korean Atlanta Mentorship here with another video given to you straight called Real Talk, which is where we talk about how society actually works and what's up. And so, what I'm going to talk about is what happens to you as you level up in life. So, the vast majority of people out there are pretty incompetent. But the problem is that the vast majority of people have a lot of pride and ego, and so they never want to admit this. And so I don't know if you ever heard of something called Price's Law. So if you never heard of Price's Law, I would look it up, right? So basically the gist of it is that if you have, let's say, a 10,000 person company, 100 people do 50% of the work, right? So there's a formula of basically the square root of whatever the number of people involved in the work do 50% of it. So if you have 10,000 people in a company, only 100 people do 50% of the work, which is you see that there's a big, gap of skill between the 100 versus the other 9,000 whatever, right? And so, because a lot of people have big egos but are incompetent, when they actually see someone who is competent and knows what they're doing and is talented and skilled, their insecurity in their back of their mind kind of takes over. And that's why, if you're a talented person and you're excellent at what it is that you do, you will attract haters and disrespect, right? And one of the things that I recommend any talented person do is talk to as many different types of people as possible, because what you'll find is that certain people in certain groups will react to you very differently than most of the general population. And one of the easiest examples that I'll give you is that people who are really, really, really rich or affiliated with rich organizations or rich companies, they will respect you more than the general population if you're excellent at what it is that you do. In fact, some of the things that you might do, that let's say shows how competent you are, will ironically be thought of as incompetent by the general incompetent population. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'll give you an example of this, right? So, let's do a hypothetical. And this may or may not be, something that happened in my own real life experiences, because I like to be a little bit vague here. But in ChatGPT, I wrote, why is it when I consult for large corporations, right? When I did consulting for large corporations, they would be so grateful for basic advice and pay lots of money. Yet when I say the same thing to normal people, they act like I'm the dumbest person um, on earth and try to lecture me, right? And so this is what I mean, like talk to different demographics, different groups of people. And it's been my experience that whenever I deal with people with lots of money, lots of power, I say the most simplest things, things that I kind of knew when I was in fifth grade. And then they're like, wow, this is excellent, right? Wow, this is excellent. And then I say the same thing to quote normal people, and they respond with vitriol and hate, and I try to act like they're better than me. So let's go ahead and see what ChatGPT says.
Ah, Cam, this is actually a really interesting social and psychological phenomenon, and it boils down to context, expectations, and perceived authority. Let me break it down carefully. 1. Perceived authority and trust. When a large corporation hires a consultant, they've explicitly put you in a position of expertise. There's a contract, a role, and a social expectation. This person knows more than we do in this domain. Ordinary people, on the other hand, often don't have that context. If you casually give advice, they have no external signal that you're an expert. It's just someone talking, and our natural defense is to question it. 2. Value versus ego. In corporations, advice is monetized, formalized, and tied to outcomes. Even if the advice is basic, it's validated by the fact that someone is being paid to give it. Gratitude comes from the perceived tangible value. In everyday interactions, advice isn't paid for or formalized. People often interpret unsolicited advice as criticism or a threat to their ego. They may feel they're being judged or that you think you know more than them. 3. Context matters. Businesses are usually looking for optimization, efficiency, or measurable improvement. Basic advice can unlock huge outcomes because corporations are large, complex systems. With individuals, the same advice might seem obvious, irrelevant, or even patronizing because they're not operating in the same high stakes system. What's valuable to a $1 billion process might feel trivial to someone budgeting their week. 4. Social norms and defensiveness. Casual social interactions come with norms about equality. When someone seems smarter or knows better, many people instinctively try to assert their own knowledge to restore balance. That's why you get lectures or pushback. It's a defensive mechanism. 5. Framing makes a huge difference. In consulting, advice is framed as expertise. Here's a way to improve X based on experience and data. To regular people, advice can feel like you're doing X wrong unless carefully framed as a suggestion or shared experience. So, really, it's not that the advice is less valid, it's that the social context shifts everything: authority, perceived value, ego, and how people interpret your intent. If you want, I can give a few practical ways to phrase basic advice so that regular people actually appreciate it instead of pushing back. That usually changes the reactions dramatically. Do you want me to do that?
So one of the things I just want to point out here is that advice is a criticism or threat to their ego. Okay. And I don't even give advice. I just kind of speak, and then it really enrages people for whatever reason. And I'm just like, all right. I really don't care. But that's what happens when you deal with people who are not excellent, is that anything that you do that is anything better than that they can do, they see as a threat. And that's why a lot of times when you're very excellent at what it is that you're do, if you work with different groups of people, you'll notice that one group of people who have all the money and power in the world will actually appreciate it, whereas the people who don't have money, because they're essentially in survival mode, they see your excellence as a threat because they're in scarcity, right? And so this is why I say that um, excellence will attract haters and disrespect, right? It will. And here's the real ironic part about society, right? Society really loves telling people that, society loves to criticize other people in the guise of, well, you're not good enough, so I must, try to make you feel bad, right? And then once you actually get really, really good, that's when because people don't know any other way to bring people down, because the only politically correct way to bring people down is to tell them that they're not good enough. Their lies and BS will be so obvious that you will just kind of like see through the matrix. But basically, we live in a crabs in a bucket society, right? It's kind of pretty sick what we do to our children, which is tell them that, hey, the only way that the adult world will respect you is if you're excellent what it is that you're do. But really, when the children grow up to be excellent adults, then they're perceived by the adult world to be a threat, and so it becomes a very confusing world for most people, right? This is why a lot of people, like, the way that they're raised is, yeah, be excellent, but we don't really expect you to be, which is why most people get tricked, right? This is why adult life is very confusing for a lot of people. Okay. So, yes. And here's the thing, I want to just end off with this, with the quote by Jack Ma. And this is kind of related to what I was talking about. It's like, hey, who's your demographic? Oh, the rich people have lots of money and they really appreciate my basic yet, I guess, effective advice. But the poor people, they're the ones who dismiss everything, right? Because that's what Jack Ma said. So he says the worst people to serve are the poor people. Give them free. They think it's a trap. Tell them it's small investment. They can't earn much. Tell them they're coming big. They'll say no money. Tell them try new things. They'll say no experience. Tell them it's traditional business. They'll say hard to do. Tell them it's a new business model. They'll say MLM. Tell them to run a shop. They'll say no freedom. Tell them to run new business. They'll say no expertise. Do say they do have some things in common. They love to ask Google, and this, nowadays will be ChatGPT. Listen to friends who are hopeless as them, and they think more than a university professor and do less than a blind man, right? So, very important to understand who your audience is And we have to realize that the vast majority of people in the society are incompetent. So when you're excellent at what you do, you'll attract haters and disrespect. Okay. All right. Well, that's it for today, folks. Real talk with the Cray Atlanta mentorship. Have a great day, and I'll see you all in the next video.